If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for listening, if anybody is listening. I'd love to be in here and talk with you guys about Baltimore Orioles, Baltimore Ravens. I know a lot of people have. But I kind of want to do a little something different today. As I just said, I'm a basketball guy. I love basketball. And I want to talk a little bit of Washington Wizards with you today. Now, Nestor left the room, so I don't know, how happy he's going to be about that. But, as a basketball fan, I kind of find myself starving a little bit for some local coverage of the Wizards. And I know a lot of people in my circle, and hopefully some people outside of the circle, are following the Wizards. And they don't get a lot of love here in Baltimore. Certainly not as much as the Capitals do. And I know that recently the success hasn't been there for Washington. It's been 4 years since we've been in the playoffs. But I think now is a good time if you want to jump on the bandwagon and look like maybe you know something. Now's a good time to jump on the Wizards bandwagon. They've been quietly putting together a nice little team this offseason, and they're not pursuing any of the sexy free agents out there. But you look at some of the teams that are chasing after the Dwight Howards of the world or Deron Williams, and they're kind of giving up everything they got. I mean, how many draft picks did Houston acquire, hoping to ship them off to get a package for Dwight Howard, and now they're kind of left with just a bunch of big men and some draft picks with nothing to do. No Dwight Howard to show for it, certainly. So a couple of the guys, the Wizards, they shipped off. Rashard Lewis is, I wouldn't say he's a bad guy, but certainly didn't show up for us last year, making over $21 million. Certainly a lot more than most of us will ever make in our lives, and didn't get the production last year. Brought in, expected to be a three-point shooter. It's what he's been most of his career, and just kind of showed up and sat on the bench a lot and chucked up a lot of bad shots. Didn't play a whole lot of defense, and didn't really do a whole lot for us. And I'm glad to see him go. And I think in Ariza and Okafor, Trevor Ariza and Emeka Okafor, we got from the New Orleans Hornets for Lewis and a second-round pick. I think those are two good pieces. They've got some winning experience. Ariza, with his time in Los Angeles with the Lakers, he went to the 2009 Finals where they won. Made a lot of big plays, especially I remember the big steal against Denver. Really sealed that game and carried him to that series victory. I think with the addition of these guys, you've got a young core here and a full offseason coming up. A lot of people don't think about what that lockout shortened season can do to a young team like the Wizards looking to develop their players. They weren't given the benefit of the summer league last year. All the training camps and everything were cut down. So that 66-game season is tough for anybody, but I think for the younger teams looking to build around their core of young players, you haven't seen the best of what these Wizards players can do yet. They made the moves last season. They got rid of JaVale McGee and Nick Young, the notorious knuckleheads that they can be as young with all the athleticism and potential that they had, but didn't really contribute a whole lot to making the Wizards club a winning team. And you bring in a guy like Nene, an older guy, maybe headed towards the downward slope of his career, has been bothered by some injuries the last couple of years, but he's kind of that stable influence and a guy that he does a little bit of everything down low. So you add them into the mix with the new guys that they got. They got Bradley Beal in the draft. Second-round picks, Satoransky, I don't think is going to be a piece here, but I think you could see this team contending for a playoff spot this upcoming season. Now you look, 20-46 last year, not the season that Wizards fans would. They've certainly got a lot of things that need to address. I mentioned with the Rashard Lewis thing, a three-point shooting. We hoped that he would fulfill that need, and that really wasn't the case. We were 28th in the league last year in three-point percentage. So Nick Young out the door. He's a solid three-point shooter, but didn't really give you a whole lot on the defensive end, and kind of had stretches where he would just disappear. Made some questionable decisions, and I think Jordan Crawford, he's certainly shown that he can get hot and step in and knock down 4 or 5 shots in a row. He's taken some deep three-pointers and nailed them at key moments, but I really don't think that he's the guy that's going to be the starting shooting guard for this franchise going forward. Certainly another guy that makes some questionable decisions. with shooting the ball. He gets a little hot and comes down and starts chucking it up to heat checks, hoping to put the team on his shoulders and carry him. And I think he'll find his role better suited as a six-man coming off the bench. Hopefully Beal can kind of step in and pull ahead as the starter and improve upon. Everybody expects him to be a great three-point shooter. They've compared him to Ray Allen. Certainly the percentage in his college shooting isn't exactly conducive to that metaphor there. With Ray Allen, I think he's around a 35% three-point shooter in college. But you watch video, watch tape of this kid, his workouts with the Wizards so far. He's got a good-looking stroke. I think certainly the benefit of coming in and working with a pro team, working with the guys on the Wizards now, certainly can build upon those solid mechanics and hopefully give this team the three-point shooting they need. I certainly don't expect John Wall to fill that role. You saw he had a pretty historically bad three-point shooting season last year. Chris Singleton, showed us that he really isn't a perimeter threat when it comes to scoring. So I think Beal could fill that role. Hopefully, there's some other shooting guards out there. The Ray Allen, I don't expect to come to Washington, but I would think that maybe a Courtney Lee could be an option if they could snag a guy like that. Another thing with Beal is it doesn't not a lot of talk with a shooting guard about being a great rebounder, but averaged around 6 rebounds a game in college, and certainly rebounding has been another area of concern for the Wizards. Okafor, been a solid rebounder his entire career, could come in and certainly give you 9 rebounds a game, hopefully. His numbers have decreased a little bit. Last year, he only played in, I think it was 27 games, which was a little bit of an anomaly for him. He's been pretty solid his whole career. I think he had one other season where he played in the 20s in games, but every other season he's been above 60 to 70 games. Certainly, Okafor could certainly help you on defense as well. He's a good shot blocker. Not really an offensive guy, but we've got some people that like to have the ball in their hands, and Nene's certainly one of those guys could put the ball in the basket and do some work down low. Another thing, you see that the Wizards started to improve towards the end of last year. I think they got a little bit more comfortable playing with each other, but the passing and the ball movement has been an issue. You see a lot of times Jordan Crawford dribbling around in circles, holding the ball. Not what you see the playoff teams doing. They're moving the ball around, and not having a three-point threat can certainly do that to you. A lot of times John Wall driving down on fast breaks didn't really have anybody to pass the ball to in the wings that could consistently knock down a jump shot. But I think that they've done a pretty good job addressing most of their concerns this offseason. Again, with the three-point shooting, you think Bradley Beal is going to come in and help you with that. A guy, Cartier Martin, was actually the Wizards' best three-point shooter last year, percentage-wise. Shoots, on average, a bit below 40%, which is considered, the benchmark for a solid three-point shooter. Martin is kind of a D-leaguer, has been around with the Wizards for a little while, contributes on the scoring end. He's a big guy, can play either the shooting guard or the small forward position. The rebounding, you got Okafor stepped in, is probably going to be your best rebounder next year. But another guy I think is going to help out a lot, Jan Vesely. And you see the last couple of years, the Wizards have done a much better job than they have in the past of getting good young talent in the draft. Certainly not a team known for being great at drafting. A lot of the guys that they've brought in have been through trades or free agency. But the last couple of years, you've added John Wall, Trevor Booker, Kevin Seraphin, Jan Vesely, Shelvin Mack, Chris Singleton, guys that appear to be pieces to rebuilding this franchise. I think Vesely, he played a lot in limited minutes last year. Certainly struggled with fouls, staying out of foul trouble often, but a lot of the progress that Vesely made didn't really show up in the stat sheet. And I know, that's kind of a cliche, but made a lot of those hustle plays. A good rebounder, he's got an unstoppable motor. Never stops moving, never stops fighting for the ball while he's out there. I think that he's going to be a big part of making this team a better rebounding team. I mentioned before, Beal could be a good rebounder for you. Trevor Booker, if he can stay healthy, is another one of those guys, a little undersized, but certainly has that unstoppable motor.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.